Why do brilliant women sometimes make decisions that seem to defy all logic? Why does the woman you care about hesitate when opportunity knocks, even when every rational voice says, go for it? The answer lies in a psychological phenomenon that affects nearly every woman you'll ever meet, yet remains invisible to most men who desperately want to help. This isn't about second-guessing or lack of confidence. It's about the neurological reality of how women's brains process choices in ways that can literally paralyze decision-making when it matters most. Research from Carnegie Mellon University reveals that women's brains process an average of 11 different variables simultaneously when making decisions, while men's brains typically focus on 3 to 4 key factors. This isn't better or worse, it's just different. But when you don't understand this fundamental difference, you might mistake thoughtful consideration for indecision or careful analysis for avoidance. The result? You unintentionally pressure the women in your life at exactly the moment they need space to process. This decision-making complexity isn't a weakness to be fixed, it's a strength to be understood and supported. When a woman takes longer to decide, she's not being difficult or uncertain. She's being thorough in a way that often leads to better outcomes. Her brain is literally considering angles and implications that most men's brains don't even register. But here's the crucial insight. This thoroughness comes at a cost. It can create decision paralysis when too many variables compete for attention. The pressure women feel to make perfect decisions amplifies this natural tendency. Society tells women they should be able to have it all while simultaneously judging them harshly for any choice that doesn't work out perfectly. This creates a psychological double bind that makes decision-making feel like walking through a minefield where every step could trigger judgment or disappointment. When you understand this dynamic, you gain incredible power to support the women in your life in ways that actually work. Instead of pushing for faster decisions, you can provide the time and space she needs to process. Instead of offering more options that increase her mental load, you can help her narrow down to the most important factors. Instead of expressing frustration with her indecisiveness, you can recognize that her careful consideration is actually one of her greatest strengths. But here's what makes this understanding truly transformative. When you learn to support women through their natural decision-making process, you become the person they trust with their biggest choices. You're not just helping them decide what to wear or where to eat. You're becoming their trusted advisor for career moves, relationship decisions, and life-changing opportunities. This trust creates bonds that superficial advice or rushed solutions could never achieve. The confidence that comes from mastering this approach is extraordinary. You stop feeling impatient or frustrated when important decisions take time and start feeling grateful that the women in your life care enough to consider all the angles. You understand that what looks like hesitation is actually wisdom in action, her brain working overtime to make sure she chooses the path that serves her best. Every woman wants to know that her careful consideration is valued, not rushed. She wants to feel supported through her decision-making process, not pressured to choose before she's ready. When you provide this kind of patient support, you're not just helping her make better decisions, you're helping her trust her own judgment more deeply. This understanding transforms you from someone who accidentally creates pressure into someone who provides relief. You become the calm presence that helps her think more clearly instead of the voice that adds to her mental chaos. And when a woman feels truly supported through her decision-making process, she doesn't just make better choices. She becomes more confident in her ability to handle whatever comes next. The reward for mastering this skill isn't just better relationships. It's the deep satisfaction of knowing you've helped the women you care about become stronger, more confident versions of themselves. You've given them something more valuable than advice. You've given them the space to trust their own wisdom while knowing you're there to support whatever choice they ultimately make. What drives women to seek approval from others even when they know they're right? Why does the woman you care about sometimes make choices based on what people might think rather than what she actually wants? This isn't insecurity or people-pleasing gone wrong. It's a fundamental psychological need so deeply embedded in female wiring that ignoring it creates chaos in relationships, careers, and personal fulfillment. Understanding this social proof addiction gives you the key to helping the women in your life break free from invisible chains that have held them back longer than they even realize. Neurological research shows that women's brains release significantly more dopamine, the reward chemical, when they receive social validation compared to men's brains. This isn't a character flaw or learned behavior. It's biological programming that made perfect sense in our evolutionary past when group acceptance literally meant survival. But in today's world, This same drive for social approval can become a prison that prevents women from taking risks, expressing their true selves, or pursuing opportunities that might invite judgment. This social validation dependency influences everything from career choices to relationship decisions to personal style. A woman might stay in a job that doesn't fulfill her because her professional network approves of it. She might remain in a relationship that feels safe rather than taking a chance on something better. She might suppress her true opinions in group settings to avoid conflict or disapproval. These aren't weak choices. They're survival strategies that her brain has learned work reliably to maintain social connection. But here's what most men don't understand. When you try to convince a woman to ignore social proof or tell her not to care what others think, you're essentially asking her brain to override millions of years of evolutionary programming. It's like telling someone to stop breathing. Technically possible, but incredibly difficult and ultimately counterproductive. The key isn't eliminating her need for social validation. It's helping her find healthier ways to meet that need while still honoring her authentic desires. This is where your understanding becomes absolutely transformational. Instead of judging her for caring about others' opinions, you can help her identify which social feedback actually matters and which doesn't. You can provide the secure base that makes her less dependent on external validation from everyone else. You can celebrate her authentic choices in ways that help her brain associate being true to herself with positive social outcomes. The confidence that comes from mastering this understanding is extraordinary. You stop feeling frustrated when she seems to prioritize others' opinions over her own happiness, and start recognizing that she's operating from a psychological framework that actually makes perfect sense. You understand that behind every people-pleasing choice is a human being trying to navigate the tension between her authentic self and her very real need for social connection. But here's what makes this knowledge truly powerful. When you consistently provide authentic validation for her true self, you're actually helping to rewire her relationship with social proof. Your approval becomes a bridge between her need for acceptance and her desire for authenticity. She learns that she can be completely herself around you and still be valued, which gives her the courage to be more authentic with others as well. Every woman wants to know that she can be accepted for who she really is, not just for how well she meets others' expectations. She wants to feel that her authentic self is enough, that she doesn't have to perform or pretend to earn love and respect. When you provide this kind of unconditional acceptance while still honoring her natural need for social connection, you're giving her something that most people spend their entire lives searching for. This understanding transforms your relationships from surface-level connections into deep partnerships where she feels safe to show you her truest self. You become the person who helps her distinguish between healthy social awareness and destructive people-pleasing. You're not trying to change who she is. You're helping her become more of who she already is at her core. The reward for mastering this insight isn't just better relationships. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing you've helped create space for the women you care about to become more authentically themselves. You've given them permission to stop performing and start living, knowing that your love and respect aren't conditional on their ability to meet everyone else's expectations. Why do accomplished women sometimes sabotage their own success? Why does the woman you care about set incredibly high standards for herself, only to feel devastated when she can't meet them perfectly? This isn't about vanity or attention-seeking. It's about a psychological prison that affects nearly every woman you'll ever meet, yet remains invisible to most men who genuinely want to help. Understanding this perfectionism trap gives you the insight to help the women in your life break free from standards that protect them, while simultaneously holding them back. Perfectionism in women isn't about being neat or organized. It's a paralyzing fear of judgment that literally rewires the brain to avoid any situation where failure is possible. Brain imaging studies show that when perfectionist women face potential failure, their amygdala, the fear center, lights up as intensely as when facing physical danger. This isn't exaggeration or drama. It's neurological reality that makes taking risks feel genuinely terrifying on a biological level. This fear of judgment isn't learned behavior or character flaw. It's evolutionary programming that made perfect sense when being rejected by the tribe could mean death. But in today's world, this same survival mechanism creates invisible barriers that prevent brilliant women from taking career risks, expressing their true opinions, or pursuing opportunities that might invite criticism. The cost of this protection is enormous. It keeps talented, capable women stuck in safe but unsatisfying situations while their potential remains untapped. Most men's response to this perfectionism is to tell women to just relax or not worry so much about what others think. But this advice misses the entire point. You're not asking her brain to ignore a minor preference. You're asking it to override a fundamental survival mechanism that feels as real and urgent as avoiding physical harm. The result? She feels misunderstood and unsupported, while you feel frustrated that your perfectly logical advice isn't helping. Here's what actually works. Instead of trying to eliminate her perfectionist tendencies, help her channel them in healthier directions. Help her distinguish between situations that truly require perfection and those where good enough is actually perfect. Provide the emotional safety that makes small failures feel survivable rather than catastrophic. Celebrate her efforts and progress, not just her flawless outcomes. The confidence that comes from mastering this approach is absolutely transformational. You stop feeling helpless when she's trapped in perfectionist thinking and start feeling empowered to provide the support that actually helps. You understand that behind every impossible standard is a human being trying to protect herself from judgment that her brain has learned to fear more than most people realize. But here's what makes this understanding truly powerful. When you consistently demonstrate that mistakes are survivable and imperfection is acceptable, you're literally helping to rewire her brain's relationship with failure. Your acceptance creates new neural pathways that make risk-taking feel less threatening over time. You're not just supporting her, you're actively helping her become braver and more resilient. Every woman wants to know that she can take risks without losing the people she cares about. She wants to feel that her worth isn't tied to her ability to perform perfectly in every situation. When you provide this kind of unconditional support, you're giving her something more valuable than any amount of encouragement. You're giving her proof that she can be imperfect and still be loved. This understanding transforms your relationships from sources of pressure into sources of courage. You become the person who helps her distinguish between healthy striving and destructive perfectionism. You're not trying to change who she is. You're helping her become more of who she already is at her core, freed from the invisible chains of fear that have held her back. The reward for mastering this insight isn't just better relationships. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing you've helped create space for the women you care about to become more authentically themselves. You've given them permission to stop performing perfectly and start living fully, knowing that your love and respect aren't conditional on their ability to meet impossible standards. What happens when a woman invests her entire emotional identity into relationships? Why does the woman you care about sometimes seem to lose herself in love, career, or even friendships? This isn't clinginess or neediness. It's a fundamental psychological reality that affects how women experience connection on a level most men simply cannot relate to. Understanding this relationship dependency gives you the insight to help the women in your life build healthier connections while strengthening your bond with them. Women's brains are literally wired to derive more of their sense of self-worth from relationships than men's brains. Neurological studies show that women's self-esteem systems are more interconnected with social bonding centers, meaning relationship status directly impacts how they feel about themselves. This isn't a choice or learned behavior. It's biological programming that evolved to ensure cooperation and group cohesion when survival depended on tribal acceptance. But here's what most men don't understand. When a woman's sense of self-worth becomes too dependent on relationship status, she enters what psychologists call emotional leverage vulnerability. Every interaction becomes loaded with meaning about her value as a person. Every disagreement feels like rejection. Every silence feels like abandonment. Her emotional investment isn't excessive. It's disproportionate to the actual threat level, making normal relationship ups and downs feel like existential crises. This dependency creates a paradox that traps many women in cycles of emotional intensity. The more they need relationships to feel whole, the more pressure they put on those relationships, which often pushes people away, which confirms their fear that they're not worthy of love, which makes them need relationships even more desperately. Breaking this cycle requires understanding that her intense emotional investment isn't a character flaw. It's a psychological pattern that can be changed with the right support. Here's where your understanding becomes absolutely transformational. Instead of being intimidated by her emotional intensity or trying to minimize her feelings, you can provide the consistent, reliable presence that helps her brain learn that relationships don't have to be all or nothing propositions. You can show her through your actions that she can be emotionally invested without being emotionally dependent. The confidence that comes from mastering this approach is extraordinary. You stop feeling overwhelmed by her emotional needs and start feeling equipped to provide exactly what helps her develop healthier relationship patterns. You understand that behind every needy behavior is a human being trying to get her fundamental need for connection met in the only way she knows how. But here's what makes this understanding truly powerful. When you consistently demonstrate that you can handle her emotional intensity without being controlled by it, you're helping her develop emotional regulation skills she may have never learned. Your calm presence during her storms teaches her nervous system that intense emotions are survivable. Your consistent return after conflicts shows her that relationships can be stable even when feelings run high. Every woman wants to know that she can love deeply without losing herself in the process. She wants to feel that her worth isn't determined by someone else's level of interest or affection. When you provide this kind of emotional stability, you're giving her something more valuable than romance or attention. You're giving her the security of knowing that she can be completely herself around you without fear of abandonment. This understanding transforms your relationships from emotional roller coasters into stable foundations. You become the person who helps her distinguish between healthy emotional investment and destructive dependency. You're not trying to change who she is. You're helping her become more secure in who she already is, freed from the constant anxiety that her relationships might disappear. The reward for mastering this insight isn't just better relationships. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing you've helped create emotional security for the women you care about. You've given them proof that they can be vulnerable and still be safe, that they can invest deeply and still maintain their sense of self. This kind of support doesn't just strengthen your connection. It helps her become the kind of person who can create healthy relationships with everyone in her life. Why do women sometimes get trapped in cycles of worry that seem to spiral out of control? Why does the woman you care about replay conversations in her mind long after they've ended, analyzing every word for hidden meanings and potential problems? This isn't overthinking or anxiety. It's a neurological tendency that affects how women process information and emotions in ways that can drain their energy and steal their joy. Understanding this overthinking vortex gives you the key to helping the women in your life find peace while strengthening your connection with them. Women's brains are literally wired to process information differently than men's brains. Brain imaging studies reveal that women have more neural connections between emotional centers and analytical regions, creating what researchers call rumination loops, mental cycles where emotions and analysis feed each other in ways that can keep the brain spinning long after the original trigger has passed. What seems like endless worrying is actually neurochemical reality that she experiences as genuinely difficult to control. This overthinking tendency isn't a character flaw or bad habit. It's evolutionary programming that once served important survival functions. In our ancestral past, being able to anticipate problems and analyze social situations in detail often meant the difference between safety and danger. But in today's world, this same analytical superpower can become a curse that prevents women from enjoying the present moment or feeling confident in their decisions. Most men's response to this overthinking is to offer solutions or tell women to just stop thinking about it. But this advice misses the entire point. You're not asking her brain to ignore a minor preference. You're asking it to override neurological patterns that feel as real and urgent as physical sensations. The result? She feels misunderstood and unsupported, while you feel frustrated that your logical advice isn't helping. Here's what actually works. Instead of trying to stop her overthinking, help her interrupt the rumination cycles in gentle, supportive ways. Provide the calm presence that helps her brain shift out of analysis mode and into present moment awareness. Ask questions that redirect her focus towards solutions rather than problems. Offer the logical perspective that her emotional brain craves but can't access when caught in worry spirals. The confidence that comes from mastering this approach is absolutely transformational. You stop feeling helpless when she's trapped in worry cycles and start feeling equipped to provide exactly what helps her find mental peace. You understand that behind every catastrophic thought is a human being trying to protect herself from potential problems that her brain has learned to anticipate with incredible detail. But here's what makes this understanding truly powerful. When you consistently provide calm, logical support during her worry storms, you're actually helping to rewire her brain's relationship with overthinking. Your presence creates new neural pathways that make it easier for her to access logical thinking when emotional thinking becomes overwhelming. You're not just supporting her, you're actively helping her develop better mental habits. Every woman wants to know that she can trust her own mind not to betray her with endless worry cycles. She wants to feel that her analytical abilities can serve her rather than trap her. When you provide this kind of consistent, calm support, you're giving her something more valuable than solutions. You're giving her the mental stability that allows her to think clearly even when emotions run high. This understanding transforms your relationships from sources of mental chaos into sources of mental clarity. You become the person who helps her distinguish between productive analysis and destructive rumination. You're not trying to change who she is. You're helping her become more master of her own mind, freed from the invisible chains of worry that have drained her energy and stolen her joy. The reward for mastering this insight isn't just better relationships. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing you've helped create mental peace for the women you care about. You've given them proof that they don't have to battle their own minds alone, that they can think deeply and still find rest, that their analytical gifts can enhance their lives rather than complicate them. This kind of support doesn't just strengthen your connection. It helps her become the kind of person who can enjoy life more fully while still using her incredible analytical abilities when they're truly needed. Why do women feel rejection more intensely than most men can even imagine? Why does the woman you care about sometimes seem devastated by criticism that feels minor to you, or withdraw after social interactions that seem perfectly normal? This isn't oversensitivity or drama. It's a fundamental neurological difference that affects how women experience social pain on a level that most men simply cannot relate to. Understanding this rejection sensitivity gives you the insight to help the women in your life navigate social challenges while building unshakable confidence in your relationship. Brain research reveals that women's brains process social rejection in the same areas that process physical pain, the anterior cingulate cortex and insula. This isn't metaphorical or exaggerated. It's literal neurological reality that makes rejection feel as real and urgent as a physical injury. When a woman experiences criticism, exclusion, or disapproval, her brain responds as if she's actually been hurt, triggering stress responses that can affect her mood, energy, and decision-making for hours or even days afterward. This heightened sensitivity to rejection isn't a character flaw or learned behavior. It's evolutionary programming that once served crucial survival functions. In our ancestral past, being sensitive to social cues and responsive to group dynamics often meant the difference between inclusion and exclusion from the tribe, which could literally mean life or death. But in today's world, the same survival mechanism can create invisible barriers that prevent women from taking risks, expressing their true opinions, or pursuing opportunities that might invite judgment. Most men's response to this sensitivity is to minimize the rejection or tell women not to take things so personally. But this approach often backfires because you're essentially asking her brain to ignore pain signals that feel as real as stubbing your toe or burning your hand. The result? She feels invalidated and misunderstood, while you feel frustrated that your logical perspective isn't helping her feel better. Here's what actually works. Instead of trying to convince her that the rejection wasn't a big deal, acknowledge that her pain is real and valid. Help her process the experience without getting pulled into the emotional vortex yourself. Provide the consistent reassurance that helps her brain learn that rejection, while painful, is survivable and doesn't define her worth or future possibilities. The confidence that comes from mastering this approach is extraordinary. You stop feeling helpless when she's hurt by rejection and start feeling equipped to provide exactly what helps her heal and move forward. You understand that behind every overreaction to criticism is a human being experiencing genuine pain that her brain has learned to treat as seriously as physical injury. But here's what makes this understanding truly powerful. When you consistently demonstrate that you can handle her sensitivity to rejection without being overwhelmed by it yourself, you're helping her develop emotional resilience she may have never learned. Your calm presence during her pain teaches her nervous system that social injuries, while real, don't have to be devastating. Your consistent support shows her that rejection doesn't mean abandonment. Every woman wants to know that she can take social risks without being destroyed by potential rejection. She wants to feel that her worth isn't determined by everyone else's level of approval or interest. When you provide this kind of emotional stability, you're giving her something more valuable than protection from criticism. You're giving her the security of knowing that she can be vulnerable and still be loved. This understanding transforms your relationships from sources of anxiety into sources of courage. You become the person who helps her distinguish between healthy sensitivity and destructive fear of rejection. You're not trying to change who she is. You're helping her become more resilient in who she already is, freed from the constant anxiety that social judgment might destroy her. The reward for mastering this insight isn't just better relationships. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing you've helped create emotional safety for the women you care about. You've given them proof that they can be authentic and still be accepted, that they can take social risks and still survive potential rejection. This kind of support doesn't just strengthen your connection. It helps her become the kind of person who can navigate the world with confidence while still maintaining her natural sensitivity to others' needs. Why do women constantly measure themselves against others, even when they know they're successful? Why does the woman you care about sometimes feel inadequate despite having everything she's worked for? This isn't vanity or insecurity. It's a psychological trap that affects nearly every woman you'll ever meet, fueled by social media and reinforced by neurological wiring that makes comparison feel as natural as breathing. Understanding this comparison addiction gives you the key to helping the women in your life break free from cycles that drain their joy and undermine their confidence. Social media has amplified women's natural tendency to compare themselves to others, creating what researchers call social comparison overload. Brain studies show that women's brains release more dopamine when they engage in social comparison, making the habit literally addictive. This isn't a choice or bad habit. It's neurochemical reality that makes comparing herself to others feel rewarding in the short term while creating chronic dissatisfaction and self-doubt in the long term. This comparison trap isn't about being shallow or competitive. It's about a fundamental human need to understand where we fit in the social hierarchy. But social media has created an environment where comparison is constant and nearly impossible to avoid. Every scroll through feeds presents new benchmarks for success, beauty, happiness, and fulfillment. The result? Even accomplished women can feel like they're falling behind, even when they're objectively doing better than most people they'll ever meet. Most men's response to this comparison trap is to tell women to just stop looking at social media or focus on their own journey. But this advice ignores the neurological reality that makes comparison feel as natural and automatic as checking the time. You're not asking her to ignore a minor distraction. You're asking her brain to override patterns that feel as instinctive as breathing or blinking. Here's what actually works. Instead of trying to eliminate comparison entirely, help her develop healthier comparison habits. Redirect her focus toward meaningful benchmarks rather than random social media highlights. Help her recognize when comparison is serving her growth versus when it's just creating unnecessary suffering. Provide the consistent affirmation that helps her brain associate her own progress with positive feelings rather than constant inadequacy. The confidence that comes from mastering this approach is absolutely transformational. You stop feeling frustrated when she compares herself to others and start feeling equipped to help her develop healthier relationship with social media and social comparison. You understand that behind every unfair comparison is a human being trying to navigate her place in the world using the only tools her brain knows how to use. But here's what makes this understanding truly powerful. When you consistently provide authentic validation for her unique journey and accomplishments, you're actually helping to rewire her brain's relationship with comparison. Your genuine appreciation creates new neural pathways that make self-recognition feel as rewarding as social comparison. You're not just supporting her, you're actively helping her develop better mental habits. Every woman wants to know that she can scroll through social media without losing sight of her own worth. She wants to feel that her journey matters, even when it doesn't look like everyone else's highlight reel. When you provide this kind of consistent, honest appreciation, you're giving her something more valuable than empty compliments. You're giving her the mental tools to maintain her sense of self-worth in a comparison-heavy world. This understanding transforms your relationships from sources of pressure into sources of grounding. You become the person who helps her distinguish between healthy inspiration and destructive comparison. You're not trying to change who she is. You're helping her become more secure in who she already is, freed from the constant anxiety that everyone else is doing better than she is. The reward for mastering this insight isn't just better relationships. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing you've helped create mental clarity for the women you care about. You've given them proof that they don't have to compete with everyone else's highlight reel to be worthy of love and respect. This kind of support doesn't just strengthen your connection. It helps her become the kind of person who can navigate social media and social situations with confidence while maintaining her sense of self-worth and personal fulfillment. Why do women often put everyone else's needs before their own, even when it costs them dearly? Why does the woman you care about sometimes sacrifice her own happiness to keep others comfortable? This isn't selflessness or martyrdom. It's a psychological pattern that affects nearly every woman you'll ever meet, driven by social conditioning and reinforced by neurological wiring that makes other-focused behavior feel morally right, even when it's personally destructive. Understanding this people-pleasing trap gives you the insight to help the women in your life develop healthier boundaries while strengthening your relationship with them. People-pleasing in women isn't about being nice or considerate. It's about a fundamental fear that setting boundaries will result in rejection or abandonment. Brain research shows that when women consider saying no or expressing their own needs, areas associated with social pain and anxiety light up more intensely than in men's brains. This isn't learned behavior or personality flaw. It's neurological reality that makes self-advocacy feel as genuinely threatening as physical danger. This pattern isn't about weakness or lack of backbone. It's about a sophisticated survival mechanism that evolved to ensure group cooperation and social acceptance. In our ancestral past, women who prioritized group harmony often had better chances of survival and reproduction. But in today's world, this same protective mechanism can create invisible barriers that prevent women from expressing their true needs, pursuing their own goals, or developing authentic relationships based on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. Most men's response to this people-pleasing is to tell women to be more selfish or think about themselves for once. But this advice completely misses the point. You're not asking her to abandon a minor preference. You're asking her brain to override survival programming that feels as real and urgent as avoiding physical harm. The result? She feels guilty for even considering her own needs, while you feel frustrated that your well-meaning advice makes her feel worse instead of better. Here's what actually works. Instead of pushing her to prioritize herself, help her understand that healthy boundaries actually serve everyone better in the long run. Show her through your actions that you can handle her saying no without withdrawing love or approval. Demonstrate that authentic relationships thrive when both people's needs are considered, not just hers. Provide the consistent support that helps her brain learn that self-advocacy doesn't lead to abandonment. The confidence that comes from mastering this approach is extraordinary. You stop feeling helpless when she sacrifices her own happiness and start feeling equipped to help her develop healthier relationship patterns. You understand that behind every selfless choice is a human being trying to protect herself from the social rejection that her brain has learned to fear more than most people realize. But here's what makes this understanding truly powerful. When you consistently demonstrate that you can handle her authentic self-expression without withdrawing affection, you're literally helping to rewire her brain's relationship with boundary setting. Your acceptance creates new neural pathways that make self-advocacy feel safe rather than threatening. You're not just supporting her, you're actively helping her become more authentic and confident. Every woman wants to know that she can express her true needs without losing the people she cares about. She wants to feel that her happiness matters as much as everyone else's comfort. When you provide this kind of consistent, unconditional support, you're giving her something more valuable than temporary peace. You're giving her the security of knowing that she can be completely herself around you without fear of rejection. This understanding transforms your relationships from one-sided sacrifices into mutual partnerships. You become the person who helps her distinguish between healthy consideration for others and destructive self-neglect. You're not trying to change who she is. You're helping her become more authentically herself, freed from the invisible chains of fear that have kept her from expressing her true needs and desires. The reward for mastering this insight isn't just better relationships. It's the profound satisfaction of knowing you've helped create authentic connection for the women you care about. You've given them proof that they can set boundaries and still be loved, that they can express their needs and still maintain important relationships. This kind of support doesn't just strengthen your connection. It helps her become the kind of person who can create healthy, balanced relationships with everyone in her life. Why do women often avoid difficult conversations even when they're necessary for healthy relationships? Why does the woman you care about sometimes suffer in silence rather than risk conflict or confrontation? This isn't avoidance or cowardice. It's a psychological protection mechanism that affects nearly every woman you'll ever meet, driven by evolutionary programming that makes conflict avoidance feel safer than potential relationship disruption. Understanding this conflict aversion gives you the key to helping the women in your life develop healthier communication patterns while deepening your connection with them. Women's brains are literally wired to experience conflict as more threatening than men's brains. Neurological studies show that when women anticipate difficult conversations, their stress response systems activate more intensely and remain elevated longer than men's. This isn't personality flaw or learned behavior. It's biological reality that makes confrontation feel as genuinely dangerous as physical threat. The fear isn't irrational. It's evolutionary programming that once ensured group cohesion and survival, when social exclusion could mean death. This conflict avoidance isn't about being passive or weak. It's about sophisticated risk assessment that evolved to protect important relationships. In our ancestral past, women who avoided unnecessary conflict often maintained better social connections and family stability. But in today's world, this same protective mechanism can create invisible barriers that prevent women from addressing important issues, expressing their true feelings, or creating the authentic intimacy that healthy relationships require. Most men's response to this conflict avoidance is to push women to just speak up or tell me what you really think. But this approach often backfires because you're essentially asking her brain to ignore danger signals that feel as real as sensing a predator nearby. The result? She feels more anxious and overwhelmed, while you feel frustrated that your direct communication style isn't helping her open up. Here's what actually works. Instead of demanding confrontation, create safe spaces for gradual truth-telling. Help her understand that difficult conversations, when approached with care, actually strengthen relationships rather than destroy them. Model the kind of honest communication that doesn't feel threatening or aggressive. Provide the consistent reassurance that helps her brain learn that conflict resolution is possible without relationship destruction. The confidence that comes from mastering this approach is absolutely transformational. You stop feeling frustrated when she avoids difficult conversations and start feeling equipped to help her develop healthier communication patterns. You understand that behind every avoidant response is a human being trying to protect important relationships using the only tools her brain knows how to use. But here's what makes this understanding truly powerful. When you consistently demonstrate that you can handle difficult truths without withdrawing love or approval, you're literally helping to rewire her brain's relationship with conflict. Your calm presence during challenging conversations teaches her nervous system that honesty and intimacy can coexist. You're not just supporting her, you're actively helping her become more courageous and authentic. Every woman wants to know that she can express difficult truths without destroying the relationships she values most. She wants to feel that her honest feelings matter more than temporary peace. When you provide this kind of consistent, supportive presence, you're giving her something more valuable than easy answers. You're giving her the security of knowing that she can be completely truthful around you without fear of abandonment. This understanding transforms your relationships from surface-level harmony into deep, authentic connection. You become the person who helps her distinguish between healthy conflict avoidance and destructive silence. You're not trying to change who she is. You're helping her become more courageously herself, freed from the invisible chains of fear that have kept her from expressing important truths. The reward for mastering this insight isn't just better relationships, it's the profound satisfaction of knowing you've helped create authentic intimacy for the women you care about. You've given them proof that they can speak their truth and still be loved, that they can address difficult issues and still maintain important relationships. This kind of support doesn't just strengthen your connection, it helps her become the kind of person who can create healthy, honest relationships with everyone in her life. What happens when you finally understand the hidden psychological patterns that drive the women in your life? What if this knowledge could transform every relationship you've ever struggled with into a source of deep connection and mutual growth? The insights you've gained aren't just information. They're transformational tools that give you the power to become the man every woman secretly hopes to find. But understanding alone isn't enough. It's what you do with this knowledge that will determine whether your relationships thrive or merely survive. These psychological truths aren't weapons to manipulate or control. They're bridges to genuine intimacy and authentic connection. When you recognize that behind every seemingly irrational behavior is a human being with legitimate psychological needs, you gain something far More powerful than advantage, you gain the ability to create relationships that fulfill both of you at the deepest levels. This isn't about changing who women are or forcing them to conform to your preferences. It's about understanding their natural wiring well enough to support their growth while maintaining your own authenticity. The confidence that comes from mastering these insights is absolutely transformational. You stop feeling like you're navigating relationships blindfolded and start feeling equipped to handle whatever emotional situation arises. You understand that emotional storms aren't threats to be feared or avoided. They're opportunities to demonstrate your reliability and deepen your connection. You realize that what seemed like weakness or irrationality was actually strength and wisdom expressed through different psychological wiring. But here's what makes this understanding truly powerful. When you consistently apply these principles in your daily interactions, you become the safe harbor that women naturally gravitate toward. You're not just improving your relationships, you're becoming the kind of man who attracts authentic connection because you've proven through your actions that you can handle the full spectrum of human emotion without losing yourself in the process. Every woman wants to know that she can be completely herself around someone she cares about. She wants to feel that her emotional intensity, her careful consideration, her need for validation, and her sensitivity to rejection are not just tolerated, but genuinely understood and appreciated. When you provide this kind of consistent, authentic support, you're giving her something that most people spend their entire lives searching for, the security of knowing that she can be vulnerable and still be loved. This understanding transforms you from just another confusing man into someone truly special, the man who gets it, who understands that real connection requires meeting women where they are, rather than trying to change them into something they're not. You become the person who helps women distinguish between healthy patterns and destructive ones, not by judging or criticizing, but by providing the stable foundation that allows them to grow stronger and more confident in themselves. The reward for mastering these insights isn't just better relationships, it's the profound satisfaction of knowing you've helped create emotional safety for the women you care about. You've given them proof that they don't have to perform or pretend to earn love and respect. You've shown them that their authentic selves are not just acceptable, but genuinely valued. This kind of support doesn't just strengthen your connection. It helps them become the kind of people who can create healthy, fulfilling relationships with everyone in their lives. The question isn't whether you'll use this knowledge. It's how quickly you'll start making the changes that transform everything. Every conversation is an opportunity to practice these principles. Every relationship challenge is a chance to demonstrate your understanding. Every moment of emotional intensity is a test of your commitment to genuine connection over temporary comfort. The women in your life are waiting for someone who truly gets them, someone who understands that their psychological patterns aren't problems to be solved, but strengths to be supported and channeled toward their highest potential.